This video is going to demonstrate how to use the if construction using the Flowgorithm or a flowchart program. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at what we did with the pseudocode for the gross pay program. We'll display the employee's name and their rate of pay rate if we need to. And then we're going to, let me just write that down. Display the employee's pay rate. And we're going to have the computer to make a decision. If the hours worked by the employee is less than or equal to 40 hours, we're going to display the hours that the employee worked. We've already displayed their pay rate, so we don't have to do that. And we're going to display their gross pay. Otherwise, if the employee worked more than 40 hours a week, the gross pay has to be calculated differently to include the time and a half. So we're going to calculate the regular hours, the overtime hours, overtime pay, regular pay, and we're going to then calculate the gross pay. We'll display the regular hours, the overtime pay, the regular pay, and the gross pay. So now we're telling the computer to make a programmed decision. In this program, we had the hours worked first and then the pay rate. But what I'm going to do is I'll copy this particular symbol and I'm going to paste it above the hours worked. And then I'm going to get rid of it here. The gross pay can be calculated after we determine how many hours that the employee works. So if we follow our pseudocode here, we display the employee's name, display the employee's pay rate. If the hours worked by the employee is less than or equal to 40, calculate the gross pay, display the hours worked, and display the employee's gross pay. Otherwise, again, we'll calculate the gross pay by including time and a half. And then we would calculate the regular hours worked, the overtime pay, the regular pay, etc. Okay, so let's show you how to demonstrate this using the Flowgorithm program. Immediately after we display the pay rate, we can use an if statement. Decision if statement to determine gross pay based on the hours worked by the employee. Why are documentations and remarks important? Because as a programmer, when you write code or either design, there are going to be other people looking at your work. You always have to make notations of what's going on. Okay, so what we're going to do right here is we're going to add that if condition or control construction. You notice that I brought in the decision symbol. True going to the right direction, false going the opposite direction. So we're going to say hours worked. If it's less than or equal to 40, if that's a true statement. A lot of times it's good to take your Boolean operations and expressions and place them inside of parentheses so that you know they're all related to each other. If that's true, then we can add gross pay is equal to hours work time pay rate, just like you see in the pseudocode. And next we'll display the hours worked by the employee and display the employee's gross pay. It's below here, so what we're going to do, the easiest thing for me to do is just to highlight this. What I'm doing is just highlighting it by using my mouse button to highlight it. Right click, cut, And then I'm going to paste it on this side of the true side of my if condition. Okay, if it's not less than or equal to 40, then the computer assumes it's greater than 40. So, and that's where we have to do all these other things. We have to um, calculate the regular pay, overtime pay, and so on. So we're going to do that next. So when the hours worked is greater than 40, we need to make sure we know what the regular hours are, which is 40. It's easier to use a variable versus a constant such as a number like 40. Overtime hours is going to equal to hours worked minus the regular hours. Regular pay is going to be hours worked times pay rate, but the overtime pay is going to be pay rate times the quantity of overtime hours times 1.5. Now, we want to make sure that all these variables have been declared. Reg hours, reg pay, overtime pay. Gross pay was already declared, but let's go back up to our program and make sure that this is correct. We want to make sure that all these variables are declared at the beginning of the program. Otherwise, when we run the code, it's going to give us an error message. So let's go back up here under our declarations, and we can place them in alpha order. So we're adding overtime hours, overtime pay, pay rate was already there. We added reg hours and reg pay. It's good to put them in alpha order. It makes it easier as you are trying to look for declarations of variables names that were declared or defined at the beginning of the program. Next, if you look at our pseudocode, it says we have to, after we calculate all this, the reg pay, overtime pay, and so on, we have to display the reg hours, reg pay, overtime pay, and then the gross pay. We will do it on the side of the flow diagram where it's false that the hours worked is less than or equal to 40, but they're going to be greater than 40, so we have to add all the display statements on this side of our if condition or Boolean expression. Okay, so let's check over all of our formulas to make sure they're correct. Regular hours are 40. Overtime hours is equal to hours worked minus the regular hours. Regular pay is going to be regular hours, which is the same thing as saying 40 times the pay rate. The overtime pay is going to be time and a half, which is the pay rate times overtime hours times 1.5. The gross pay is going to equal to the reg pay plus the overtime pay. So now, let's save the program and let's run it to see if it's working properly. Enter the employee's name. I'll just put in James Green. How many hours did James Green work? Oh, 40 hours. He makes $39.50 an hour. And so the program displays the name, the pay rate, the hours worked, and the gross pay, which is great. Let's run it again so that we check to see if this person is working overtime. Beth Lane, she worked 65 hours. Her pay rate is $75 an hour. Okay, so we entered the correct information. Let's just move it over here so you can see that a little bit better. Okay, so Beth Lane, her pay rate is $75 an hour. Hours worked 40. Overtime hours 25. Regular pay is $3,000 because you take 40 times 75 will give you $3,000. The overtime pay is time and a half. So it'll be $2,812.50. If you look at the if condition, it's going to yield the gross pay. So rather than us writing out the gross pay on each side, because we know it's going to yield that regardless, we can remove it from the truth side and place it immediately after the if statement. And that might be a better way to minimize redundancy. So let's run the program one more time. Jeff Butler, he works 70 hours, weighs 3250. And so now we see is 3250, regular hours 40, overtime hours 30, $1,300, overtime pay $1,462.50, gross pay $2,762.50. Let's briefly review over the entire flow diagram. And we see our condition, our if statements. And at the end, we yield the gross pay, and we end the program. Please stay tuned for the next video, which will convert to Python. We're going to take this Flowgorithm program, convert it to Python, and then we're going to use the F strings to make our layout look better, more formatted, based on what we do in the real workforce.